The chandeliers sparkled like frozen fireworks above the restaurant tables. Everything in Ristorante Luminosa gleamed. The silver forks, the crystal glasses, even the marble floors that reflected the candlelight like a mirror made of clouds. Outside the tall windows, Milan streets buzzed with cars and people rushing home. But inside, time moved slowly, like honey dripping from a spoon. Americani's feet hurt. She had been walking back and forth between tables for 6 hours straight, carrying heavy trays and forcing smiles onto her tired face. Her black uniform was pressed and neat, but underneath, her back ached and her stomach growled. She hadn't eaten since breakfast, a single piece of bread with jam. 3 years ago, Amamira's life looked completely different. Back then, she sat in bright classrooms at Rome University, surrounded by thick books and the smell of old paper. She studied languages, Italian, French, English, Spanish, even a little Arabic. Words danced in her mind like butterflies. Each one carried its own color and music. Her professors called her brilliant. Her mother called her my shining star. Then everything shattered like a dropped glass. A jealous student named Gabriella accused Amamira of cheating on an important exam. It wasn't true, not even a little bit true. But Gabriella's uncle worked in the university office, and somehow the lie grew bigger and bigger until it swallowed the truth whole. The university committee didn't listen to Amamira's explanations. They saw a poor girl with no powerful family, no important connections. Within 2 weeks, they kicked her out. Amamira's mother got sick right after that, a sickness that needed expensive medicine, doctors who charged more money than they had ever seen. So Amamira packed a small suitcase, took a train north to Milan, and found the only job that would hire her without questions, serving food to rich people who never looked at her face. She sent almost every coin home to Mama. Tonight, the restaurant buzzed with its usual crowd of wealthy diners. Couples whispered over wine. Businessmen laughed too loudly at their own jokes. And then he walked in. Adrian Valley moved through the restaurant like a king entering his castle. He was 42 years old, tall, with silver streaks in his black hair, and a suit that probably cost more than a car. Behind him walked 3 people. Marco and Leon, 2 men in expensive watches who laughed at everything Adrian said, and Elena, a beautiful woman with sad eyes who wore a diamond ring the size of a marble. They sat at the best table, the one by the window with a view of the cathedral lit up against the night sky. Amamira was assigned to serve them. Her heart sank a little, but she straightened her shoulders and walked over with menus tucked under her arm. "Good evening," she said in her gentlest voice. "Welcome to Ristorante Luminosa. May I start you with something to drink?" Adrian didn't look at her. He snapped his fingers like he was calling a dog. "Bring us your most expensive wine, the 2009 Barolo, for glasses." His voice was smooth and cold, like expensive ice cream that had no sweetness. Amamira nodded and hurried to the wine cellar. The bottle was stored in a special cabinet behind glass. She carried it carefully, as if she were holding a sleeping baby. The bottle was older than her little sister would have been, if her sister had lived past her 2nd birthday. Amamira shook that sad thought away and returned to the table. As she poured the deep red wine into the first glass, Adrian started speaking, but not in English, in Italian. Versa con attenzione, ragazza, questa bottiglia costa più del tuo misero stipendio. Non vogliamo che mani di canadina, rovinino un vino del genere. Pour carefully, girl. This bottle costs more than your week's salary. We don't want peasant hands ruining wine like this. Marco and Leon burst out laughing. Elena's lips twitched, but she looked down at her napkin. They thought Amamira couldn't understand them. They thought she was just another invisible server, a person whose brain didn't matter, whose feelings were as unimportant as a shadow. Something hot and bright flared up in Amamira's chest. It wasn't anger exactly. It was something stronger, something that had been sleeping for 3 long years, ever since the university had thrown her out like garbage. It was her voice, her real voice, the one that belonged to a girl who used to win every debate, who could speak 5 languages, who dreamed of becoming a translator for the United Nations. Amamira set the wine bottle down gently. She looked straight into Adrian Valley's eyes, those cold, arrogant eyes that had never seen her as human, And she spoke in perfect, flowing Italian, the kind of Italian that professors use, with every word placed exactly right, like notes in a symphony. Mi perdoni, signore, ma devo correggerla. Questo burlo costa esattamente €850. Io guadagno €1.200 al mese. Quindi, matematicamente, lei assai sbaglia. Ma forse ella medica non è il suo forte quando è troppo occupato a mancar di rispetto persone che lavorano più duramente in un giorno di quando lei abbia mai lavorato in vita sua. Forgive me, sir, but I must correct you. This burlo costs exactly €850. I earn €1,200 per month. So mathematically, you are wrong. But perhaps arithmetic is not your strength when you're too busy disrespecting people who work harder in one day than you have worked in your entire life. The table went silent. Completely, totally silent. It was a kind of silence that feels heavy like a blanket made of stone. Marco's mouth fell open. Leon stopped mid-laugh, his face frozen like a pause video. Elena's eyes went wide, and something like respect flickered across her face. Adrian's face turned red, then purple, like a grape transforming in fast motion. Come OSI? How dare you? He sputtered. Amamira didn't flinch. Her hands were steady. Her voice was calm. Oso perciò rispetto non ha prezzo, signore. E non si compra con una carta di credito nera. Parlo cinque lingue. Ho studiato all'università prima che la vita mi portasca. E se lei pensa che ai suoi soldi le diano a il diritto di trattare le persone come spazzatura, allora è più povero di quanto pot my immaginare. I dare because respect has no price, sir, and it cannot be bought with a black credit card. I speak 5 languages. I studied at university before life brought me here, and if you think your money gives you the right to treat people like trash, then you are poorer than you could ever imagine. The entire restaurant had stopped eating. Forks hung in midair. Whispers rippled from table to table like wind through grass. Adrian stood up so fast his chair fell backward with a crash. Manager, he roared. Manager now. And that's when Amamira's Real test began. End of section 1. What happens when the manager arrives? Will Amamira lose everything she's worked for? And who is recording this moment on their phone? Find out in section 2. The manager appeared within seconds, rushing between tables like a ship cutting through water. His name was Giovanni, a thin man with worried eyes who was always afraid of losing important customers. He saw Adrian's red face, the fallen chair, and Amamira standing straight and calm like a tree in a storm. What is happening here? Giovanni asked, but his voice already sounded like an apology. Adrian pointed at Amamira, as if she were a criminal. This server just insulted me, in front of my guests. She needs to be fired, right now, or I will make sure every newspaper in Milan knows that Ristorante Luminosa allows staff to attack paying customers. Giovanni's face went pale. He turned to Amamira, and she could see the question in his eyes. Was it worth it? Was your pride worth your job? But before Amamira could speak, something unexpected happened. A voice came from table 7. She didn't attack anyone. She defended herself. Everyone turned. An older woman in a pearl necklace sat with her husband, her fork still in her hand. We heard everything. That man insulted her first, in Italian. He thought she wouldn't understand. That's true, said a young man at table 12, holding up his phone. I recorded the whole thing. Amamira's heart jumped. Recorded? The young man, he looked like a university student, stood up. His phone screen glowed. This billionaire called her a peasant, said she had peasant hands. She only responded with facts and dignity. If anyone should leave, it's him. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the restaurant like waves. People nodded. Some even started clapping softly. But Adrian's face grew darker. His fists clenched. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I could buy this restaurant tomorrow and fire every single one of you. I have connections I could destroy. Adrian. Elena's voice was quiet, but it cut through his rage like scissors through paper. Stop. He whirled to face his fiancée. What? Elena stood slowly. Her diamond ring caught the candlelight. Just stop, please. Her voice cracked a little. She's right. What you said was cruel. We all heard it. For a moment, Adrian looked like he'd been slapped. His mouth opened and closed. Marco and Leon suddenly became very interested in their wine glasses. But Adrian Valley was a man who had spent his whole life winning. He wasn't about to lose now. He turned back to Giovanni. It's simple. Fire her, or lose my business forever. I spend 30,000 euros here every month. What does she bring you? Nothing. The silence that followed felt like the moment before thunder. Giovanni looked at Amamira. His eyes were sad, tired, defeated. Amamira, I'm sorry. Please collect your things. Amamira felt her chest tighten, but she refused to cry. Not here, not in front of him. She had cried enough tears in the past 3 years to fill a river. She had no more to waste on men who measured human worth in euros. She untied her apron slowly, folded it neatly, and placed it on the table. I understand, Giovanni. Thank you for the job. I hope you sleep well tonight, knowing what you chose. Then she did something that no one expected. She turned to Adrian and gave a small bow. Not a scared bow, but the kind of bow a queen might give to show she was above the fight. Signore, she said softly in Italian, I hope one day you learn that power without kindness is just weakness wearing expensive clothes. I truly hope you learn that before it's too late. She looked at Elena. And, Signora, you have kind eyes. Don't let them become cold like his. Then Amamira walked toward the exit. Her head was high. Her steps were steady. Every eye in the restaurant followed her. As she reached the door, the older woman in pearls stood up. Brava, she called out. Brava, young lady. Other people joined her. Brava, they called. Some even applauded. The sound filled the restaurant like music. Amamira pushed through the glass doors and stepped into the cool Milan night. Only then did she let herself breathe. Only then did her hands start to shake. She had no job, no money coming in. Mama's medicine was expensive. What had she done? But somewhere deep inside, beneath the fear, she felt something else. Something warm and bright. She felt free. Inside the restaurant, chaos bloomed like a sudden storm. Marco leaned over to Adrian. Maybe we should just leave, man. People are staring. But Adrian was too angry to think clearly. Let them stare. I won't be disrespected by some waitress who thinks she's clever. Elena sat back down, but she didn't touch her wine. Her mind was spinning like a wheel. She kept seeing Amamira's face, the dignity, the calm strength, and she kept hearing Adrian's cruel words she had heard him say before about other people. Valets, assistants, anyone he thought was beneath him. Was this who she was going to marry? A man who crushed people for sport? At table 12, the university student was doing something that would change everything. His name was Luca, and he studied journalism. He knew a powerful story when he saw one. He uploaded the video to social media with a simple caption. Billionaire insults waitress in Italian. She responds perfectly and teaches him about respect. Watch until the end. Hashtag dignity, hashtag Milano, hashtag respect. He hit post and put his phone away. Within 10 minutes, the video had 100 views. Within an hour, 10,000. By midnight, it would reach 1 million. Amamira walked through the dark streets, her mind numb. She didn't know where she was going. Home was a tiny room she shared with 2 other women, both cleaning ladies who snored and left dirty dishes everywhere. She couldn't face that room yet. She couldn't face their questions. So she walked to the Duomo, the great cathedral that rose into the night like a mountain made of marble and dreams. She sat on the steps and looked up at the stars peeking through the city lights. Mama, she whispered to the sky, I think I just made a terrible mistake. Her phone buzzed. A message from her roommate Clara. Amamira, are you okay? You're on the internet. What? Amamira opened her social media, and her heart stopped. There she was, on video, standing at that table, speaking in Italian with her chin up and her voice steady. The video had been shared thousands of times. The comments flooded in like rain. This woman is a hero. That billionaire is disgusting. Someone find this waitress and give her a better job. She speaks better Italian than most Italians. This is what courage looks like. More messages came in. From strangers. From old friends she'd lost touch with. From people all over Italy. Then her phone rang. A number she didn't recognize. Hello. Her voice shook. Is this Americani? A woman's voice, professional and warm. Yes. My name is Sofia Benedetti. I'm a reporter with La Repubblica. I'd love to interview you about what happened tonight. The whole country is talking about you. Amamira's head spun. I don't understand. You stood up to Adrian Valley, one of the most powerful investors in Europe, and you did it with grace and intelligence. People are calling you La Voce del Rispetto, the voice of respect. Would you be willing to tell your story? Amamira thought about Mama, sick in bed 300 kilometers away. She thought about the university that had thrown her out based on lies. She thought about every rich person who had ever snapped their fingers at her like she was a trained dog. Yes, she said. Yes, I'll tell my story. Back at his penthouse apartment, Adrian Valley poured himself expensive whiskey and tried to forget the evening. Marco and Leon had left quickly after dinner, making excuses. Even Elena had been quiet on the drive home, refusing to hold his hand. His phone buzzed. A message from his business partner in London. Adrian, what the hell is this video? Call me Edipi. Video? What video? He opened his social media and felt the floor tilt beneath him. There he was, sneering, calling a waitress a peasant. And there she was, that girl, destroying him with words while the whole restaurant watched. The comments were brutal. This is who manages billion-dollar funds? Disgusting. I'm pulling my investment from Valley Capital tomorrow. Boycott this man. Someone investigate him. People this cruel usually have more skeletons. Adrian's hand shook. This couldn't be happening. He was Adrian Valley. He controlled boardrooms. He influenced governments. He couldn't be destroyed by some waitress. But as the video climbed toward 2 million views, as news outlets began calling his office, as his own mother sent him a text that said simply, I raised you better than this, Adrian Valley realized something terrifying. He had finally met someone he couldn't buy, couldn't intimidate, and couldn't control. And she had just changed both their lives forever. End of section 2. The video has gone viral. Amamira's life is about to transform. But what will Adrian do when his empire starts crumbling? And what secret plan is forming in Elena's guilty heart? Find out in the final section. The sun rose over Milan like a golden coin flipping into the sky. Amamira hadn't slept. She sat in a cafe with Sofia, the reporter, drinking coffee that tasted like hope mixed with fear. Tell me everything, Sofia said, her recorder sitting between them like a small black witness. Start from the beginning. So Amamira did. She talked about Rome University, about the false accusations, about Gabriella's jealous lies and a committee that wouldn't listen. She talked about her mother's illness, the expensive medicine, the train north to a city that didn't know her name. She talked about 3 years of invisible work, of aching feet and swallowed pride. And she talked about last night, about the moment when something inside her finally said, enough. Sofia listened with tears in her eyes. When Amamira finished, the reporter reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Your story is going to change things, Sofia said. I promise you that. The article published that afternoon. The headline read, The Waitress Who Spoke 5 Languages, the real story behind viral video. Within hours, the article spread across Italy like wildfire. News programs picked it up. Talk shows debated it. People who had never thought twice about servers or cleaners suddenly stopped and wondered, how many brilliant people are invisible because we don't bother to see them? Adrian Valley's world was collapsing like a sandcastle hit by a wave. By morning, 3 major investors had pulled out of his European fund. His office phone rang constantly. Angry partners, frightened employees, journalists demanding comments. His social media was flooded with thousands of angry messages. But the worst came at noon. His biggest client, a German pension fund worth 2 billion euros, sent a formal letter. Valley Capital no longer represents the values we wish to support. We are terminating our contract immediately. Adrian sat in his office, surrounded by glass walls and expensive art that suddenly meant nothing. He thought about calling lawyers, about suing someone, about fighting back. But who could he sue? The truth? His assistant knocked softly. "Sir, your mother is on line 3. She says it's urgent." Adrian closed his eyes. His mother had called him twice already. He hadn't answered. He couldn't face her disappointment. "Tell her I'll call back," he said weakly. But he knew he wouldn't. Elena couldn't stop watching the video. She had watched it 17 times, each time feeling sicker to her stomach. The man she was supposed to marry looked like a monster on that screen. And she had sat there. She had almost laughed. What did that make her? She thought about her own life, her wealthy family, the private schools, the charity galas where rich people donated money and felt good about themselves while never actually talking to poor people, never actually seeing them as human. She thought about Amamira's eyes, tired but fierce, hurt but unbroken. Elena made a decision that morning. She took off her engagement ring and placed it in a small box. Then she made 3 phone calls. The first was to her father, who sat on the board of Rome University. The second was to her lawyer. The third was to a private investigator. "I need you to find someone named Gabriella," Elena said. "A student at Rome University who made false accusations 3 years ago. I need proof, and I need it fast." 5 days after the video went viral, Amamira received a letter. It was on thick, expensive paper with a gold seal at the top. Her hands shook as she opened it. "Dear Ms. Connie, the board of Rome University has completed a review of your case from 3 years ago. New evidence has come to light proving that the accusations against you were false and malicious. We deeply regret the injustice you suffered. Your scholarship is hereby reinstated. All records of misconduct have been erased. Furthermore, we would like to offer you a position as a teaching assistant in our linguistics department, with full tuition coverage for your master's degree. We hope you will consider returning to complete your education." Amamira read the letter 3 times. Then she called her mother and cried so hard she couldn't speak for 5 minutes. "Mama," she finally gasped, "I'm going back. I'm going back to university." Her mother's voice was weak, but full of joy. "I knew it, my shining star. I always knew." 2 weeks later, Amamira sat in a bright office overlooking Rome. Across from her sat a woman in an elegant suit with kind eyes. "My name is Elena," the woman said, "though we've met before, at a restaurant in Milan." Amamira's breath caught. You were with him." "I was engaged to him," Elena corrected gently. Past tense. "I ended that relationship the day after the video came out." She paused. "I owe you an apology. I sat at that table and said nothing. I was complicit in his cruelty, and I'm sorry." Amamira didn't know what to say. Elena continued, "I also owe you an explanation. I'm the one who contacted my father at the university. I hired an investigator who found Gabriella and got her confess. She was recorded admitting everything. The university had no choice but to clear your name." "Why?" Amamira whispered. "Why would you do that for me?" Elena's eyes glistened. "Because you reminded me of something I'd forgotten. That courage matters more than comfort. That standing up for what's right is more important than keeping the peace." She took a breath. "And because I want to offer you a job." "A job?" "I'm starting a foundation. It's called La Voce del Rispetto, the voice of respect. We're going to help workers who face discrimination and abuse. We're going to provide legal aid, education support, and advocacy. And I need someone who speaks multiple languages, who understands what it's like to be invisible, and who has the courage to speak truth to power." Elena smiled. "I need you." Amamira felt like she was dreaming. "But I'm going back to university." "Perfect. You'll work part-time while you study. We'll work around your schedule. And when you graduate, if you want to stay with us full-time as our director of translation and advocacy, the job is yours." Amamira looked out the window at Rome's ancient buildings, at the city that had once rejected her and was now welcoming her home. She thought about the girl who had arrived in Milan 3 years ago, broken, scared, invisible, And she thought about who she was now, someone who had found her voice and changed thousands of lives by using it. Yes, Almamira said, I'll do it. 6 months later, La Voce del Rispetto had helped 247 workers across Italy. They had won lawsuits against abusive employers. They had reunited families. They had reminded the country that every person, no matter their job, deserved dignity. Almamira became the face of the movement. She gave speeches at universities. She appeared on news programs. She traveled to Brussels to speak to the European Parliament about workers' rights. And everywhere she went, people recognized her. They stopped her on streets and in airports. They told her their own stories of disrespect and courage. You gave me strength, an elderly cleaning woman told her in Florence. My daughter watches your video every day, a father said in Venice. She says she wants to be brave like you. Almamira always smiled and said the same thing. We're all brave. Sometimes we just need someone to see us first. As for Adrian Valley, his empire crumbled slowly. Then all at once, more investors left. His reputation was destroyed. Within a year, Valley Capital was bankrupt. He lost his penthouse, his cars, his so-called friends. He tried to rebuild, but no one would work with him. The video had exposed not just his cruelty, but his character. And in the world of business, character was everything. Last anyone heard, Adrian was working as a consultant for a small firm in Brussels, making a fraction of what he once earned. Marco and Leon had long since moved on to other rich friends. Some people said he got what he deserved. Others said it was too harsh. But Almamira, when asked about him in interviews, always said the same thing. I hope he learned something. I hope he discovered that respect isn't something you can buy or destroy. I hope he became kinder. That's all any of us can hope for, that our mistakes teach us to be better. 3 years after that night at Ristorante Luminosa, Almamira stood on a stage in Milan. She wore a simple blue dress and held a microphone. Behind her, a screen showed the original video, the moment that had started everything. The auditorium was packed with workers, students, activists, and journalists. Even Giovanni, her old manager, sat in the third row. He had apologized publicly months ago and now volunteered with the foundation. That night, Almamira said, her voice clear and strong, I was tired. I was scared. I was invisible. But I had one thing that no one could take from me, my voice. And when I finally used it, everything changed. She paused, looking out at the sea of faces. We all have that power. Every single one of us. The power to speak up when we see injustice. The power to defend those who can't defend themselves. The power to refuse to be invisible. The crowd erupted in applause. Language is powerful, Almamira continued. But respect, true respect, is the most important language of all. It doesn't need translation. It doesn't need fancy words. It just needs us to see each other as human beings, to treat each other with dignity, to remember that kindness costs nothing but means everything. She smiled, and in that moment, she looked like exactly what her mother had always called her, a shining star. So I'll leave you with this. The next time you see someone who seems invisible, a server, a cleaner, a driver, anyone, really see them. Speak to them like they matter, because they do. We all do. The standing ovation lasted 5 full minutes. Epilogue. Today, Almamira Kani is 29 years old. She holds a master's degree in linguistics and serves as director of La Voce del Rispetto, which has expanded to 12 European countries and helped over 10,000 workers. Her mother's health has improved with better medical care. They talk every Sunday. Elena remains one of Almamira's closest friends and allies. Together, they've created scholarship programs for students from poor families, ensuring that what happened to Almamira never happens to anyone else. The video still circulates online, a reminder that one moment of courage can echo forever. And whenever someone asks Almamira what she's most proud of, she never mentions the awards or the speeches or the movement she helped build. She says, I'm proud that I didn't stay silent. I'm proud that I remember my worth when someone tried to make me forget it. And I'm proud that maybe, just maybe, I helped others remember theirs too. Respect, after all, is a language everyone can speak. You just have to choose to use it. The end. If this story touched your heart, like this story if you believe in dignity and respect for all people, no matter their job or status. Share this with someone who needs to hear that their voice matters, that they are seen, and that courage can change everything. Subscribe for more stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Stories that remind us that humanity, kindness, and justice are the most powerful forces in the world. Remember, respect has no price tag. Dignity needs no permission. And your voice, can change someone's life. Never stay silent when it matters. The world is listening.